brain, Ramachandran goes back through his book and readdresses points he made earlier in the novel. He also gives these points in the perspective of how man and ape and just pretty much man and any other animal are different. I automatically liked this chapter because it discussed neuroscience with respect to a patient right off the bat. While I find the majority of Ramachandran's book to be interesting, my favorite parts are consistently where he talks about his patients from chapter to chapter. This patient in particular, Jason Murdoch, couldn't walk, talk, or initiate actions, but he could recognize his father's voice on the phone. But when he saw his father in person, he didn't recognize him, and he was pretty much a vegetable. Ramachandran went on to explain this by talking about how higher order abstractions in the human brain called meta-representations. Essentially, the way our brains are wired allow for that when one circuit remains intact but another is damaged, that might cause the other one to not function properly. But because of meta-representations, when you isolate the functional circuit, such as with Jason Murdoch, when he talked to his dad on the phone, he'd be isolating his functional auditory circuit. He was able to recognize his father. For me, the most interesting part of this chapter was on transsexuality. It presented me with new information on sex in the brain that I never fathomed to be possible. I would have never guessed that a transsexual woman was capable of believing that she had a phantom erection. Part of why I also found this section to be so interesting was I never viewed transsexualism as a neurological wiring thing. I assumed it was just a lifestyle choice. The most interesting thing to me, though, was that transsexual individuals would rather have surgery than be cured of being transsexual and changing their desires. Lastly, the only thing I didn't like about this chapter was that some of the little sections he wrote were a bit unnecessary. For example, the section on autism presented no new information and almost took away from some of the new and interesting things in the chapter. Some of them seemed a little bit out of place because while most of it represented the differences between humans and animals, this section did not do a very good job of that.